The first gunshot rattled the windows of Rose Creek's only general store, silencing the whispers that had dogged Lily Sullivan's footsteps since dawn. She clutched her basket tighter against her growing belly, refusing to cower, despite the murmurs that followed her down every dusty street of the small Montana town. Spring of 1875 had brought new life to the valley wildflowers dotting the prairie and the first warm breezes after a bitter winter, but for Lily, it had only brought shame. "Don't you have somewhere else to be, Miss Sullivan?" Mrs. Hornsby's voice cut through the suddenly quiet store. The shopkeeper's wife made no effort to hide her disdain as she placed herself between Lily and the jar of pickles she'd been reaching for. "Decent folk are trying to shop." Lily straightened her back, ignoring the ache that had settled there in recent weeks. At 21, she'd never imagined herself unmarried and 5 months with child, but here she stood, the scandal of Rose Creek. "I have the same right to be here as anyone," she said, her voice steady despite the heat crawling up her neck. "Rights?" Mrs. Hornsby scoffed. "You forfeited those when you—" Another gunshot cracked outside, followed by the thunder of hooves. The store door flew open, bringing with it a swirl of dust and the imposing figure of Preston Drake. "Town's got trouble," he announced, his voice carrying through the store. His gaze swept the room before landing on Lily. Something flickered across his features, not the judgment she'd grown accustomed to, but something else entirely. Preston Drake had ridden into Rose Creek just 3 weeks prior, taking the vacant deputy position with little fanfare. Tall and broad-shouldered, with eyes the color of the storm clouds that gathered over the mountains and a jawline that could have been carved from granite, he cut an imposing figure. The kind of man who commanded respect without asking for it. "Blackwell gang's been spotted 10 miles east," he continued, addressing the room but somehow speaking directly to Lily. "Everyone best head home and stay there till Marshal Thompson gives the all-clear." The patrons hurriedly abandoned their shopping, eager to spread the news. Lily moved to follow them, but Preston's hand caught her elbow gently. "Miss Sullivan," he said, his voice lower now, meant for her ears alone. "May I escort you home?" Before she could answer, Mrs. Hornsby snorted. "Deputy, you're new here. You should know that Miss Sullivan is." She paused, savoring the moment, ruined. The word hung in the air between them. Lily had heard it whispered behind fans and muttered in church pews for months now, but never so boldly to her face. Preston's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Madam," he said to Mrs. Hornsby, his tone deceptively mild, "I'd thank you to mind your business." He turned back to Lily. "My offer stands." The whispers followed them out onto the boardwalk, but Preston seemed oblivious to them as he led Lily toward her small house at the edge of town. His horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion, followed dutifully behind. "You don't need to do this," Lily said once they were beyond earshot of the busybodies. "You're new here. You don't want to be associated with me." Preston's stride didn't falter. "I reckon I can choose my own associations, Miss Sullivan. It's just, people will talk. People always talk. Doesn't make what they say worth listening to." They walked in silence for several moments, Lily acutely aware of the curious eyes watching from windows and porches. Preston Drake might be new to town, but he'd quickly earned respect. Now he was risking that hard-won regard by publicly escorting the most scandalous woman in Rose Creek. "The Blackwell gang," Lily said, desperate to change the subject. "Are they truly nearby?" "Afraid so." "Robbed the stage from Helena yesterday. 3 men dead," Lily shuddered. "Will they come here?" "Hard to say. Town's small enough they might pass it by, but everyone should be cautious." They reached Lily's small house, a modest structure at the end of Willow Street. Once it had been her parents' home, but they'd moved east after her father's lungs couldn't take another Montana winter. They'd begged her to come with them, especially after learning of her condition, but Lily had refused. Rose Creek was the only home she'd ever known, even if it had turned its back on her. "Thank you, Deputy Drake," she said, pausing at her gate. Preston removed his hat, revealing a shock of dark hair. "Preston," he corrected. "And it was my pleasure, Miss Sullivan." "Lily," she returned, surprised by her own boldness. His smile transformed his face, softening the hard lines and bringing warmth to those storm cloud eyes. "Lily, then." He hesitated, then added, "I meant what I said in the store. Don't let them make you feel small. You've got as much right to be here as anyone." With that, he tipped his hat and turned to leave. Lily watched him go, feeling something stir inside her that wasn't just the baby moving. For the first time in months, someone had looked at her and seen more than her mistake. She placed a hand on her swollen belly. "He seems different, little one," she whispered, "but don't get your hopes up. In this town, he'll learn to see me the way the others do soon enough." Inside her small house, Lily moved to the window, watching as Preston mounted his horse and rode back toward town. She didn't know why he'd shown her kindness, but she wouldn't read too much into it. Men had a way of disappointing her, after all. The next morning dawned clear and crisp, the kind of spring day that made the mountains seem close enough to touch. Lily woke early, as was her habit since childhood, despite the growing fatigue that accompanied her pregnancy. She had chores to attend to, regardless of what the town thought of her. She'd just finished feeding her small flock of chickens when she spotted a rider approaching. The sun backlit his figure, but there was no mistaking the broad shoulders and straight posture of Preston Drake. He dismounted at her gate, removing his hat as he approached the porch where she stood. "Good morning, Miss Lily," he corrected himself. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," she replied, suddenly conscious of her plain work dress and loose braid. "Is there news about the Blackwell gang? Nothing new?" He seemed to be searching for words, unusual for a man who struck her as naturally confident. "I actually came to check on you after yesterday at the store." Lily's cheeks warmed. "That was kind but unnecessary. I'm quite used to Mrs. Hornsby's opinions. You shouldn't have to be." Something hardened in his expression. "The way this town treats you isn't right. Perhaps, but it's the way of things. A woman in my position can't expect much else." She forced a small smile. "Would you like some coffee? It's the least I can offer after your escort yesterday." Preston hesitated, then nodded. "That would be mighty nice." Inside, Lily busied herself with the percolator while Preston stood awkwardly in her small kitchen. It struck her suddenly how long it had been since she'd had a visitor. Since the father of her child had abandoned her 6 months ago, most of the town had treated her home like it housed some contagious disease. "You live here alone?" Preston asked, his eyes taking in the modest but tidy space. "My parents moved to Boston last fall. My father's health." She trailed off. "This was our family home. They left it to me when they departed." "That's fortunate." Lily's laugh held little humor. "Yes, well, without it, I'd likely be destitute. Not many employment opportunities for unwed mothers in Rose Creek." Preston accepted the cup she handed him, their fingers brushing briefly. "If you don't mind my asking, the father of your child." "Left," Lily said simply. "Thomas Wilkes. He was passing through town working on the new railroad spur." She swallowed hard. "He had a wife in Denver." "I didn't know until after he was gone." Preston's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, allowing her to continue. "By the time I realized I was with child, he was long gone, and Rose Creek." She gestured vaguely. "Well, you've seen how they feel about my situation." "It takes two to make a child," Preston said, his voice low with controlled anger. Yet I don't imagine this Wilkes fellow would be treated the same had he stayed. The world isn't fair to women, Deputy. Surely that's not news to you. He took a sip of coffee, his eyes never leaving hers. No, it's not news, but that doesn't make it right. They fell into silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Preston finished his coffee and thanked her, heading for the door. I should let you get on with your day, he said, settling his hat back on his head. But I was wondering if you might permit me to call on you again. Lily stared at him, certain she'd misheard. I beg your pardon to call on you, he repeated. Properly, I mean. Deputy Drake, you can't be serious. Preston, he corrected gently, and I'm entirely serious. You know what people will say. A slow smile spread across his face. Let them talk. I've never much cared for other people's opinions. Before Lily could formulate a response, he tipped his hat and strode out the door, leaving her standing in the doorway, utterly bewildered. For the next week, Preston made good on his word, visiting Lily every evening after his duties were completed. They would sit on her porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson, talking about everything and nothing. Lily learned that Preston hailed from Texas originally, that he'd fought for the Union during the war despite his Southern roots, and that he'd been a lawman for nearly 5 years. He spoke little of his family, mentioning only that he had few ties remaining. In turn, she told him of growing up in Rose Creek, of her dreams to someday see the ocean, of the books she treasured, stories of far-off places and grand adventures she'd likely never experience. You still could, you know, Preston said one evening as they watched the first stars appear. See those places you read about? Lily's hand went instinctively to her belly. My adventuring days are over before they began, I'm afraid. I have different responsibilities now. A child doesn't mean the end of dreams, Lily. It might just mean adjusting them a bit. She studied his profile in the fading light. You have a curious way of seeing the world, Preston Drake. Do I? He turned to face her, their eyes meeting. I just see things as they are, not as others would have us believe they should be. The baby kicked then, a strong movement that made Lily gasp softly. Without thinking, she grabbed Preston's hand and placed it on her belly. Here, feel. For a moment, they both froze, the intimacy of the gesture dawning on them. But then the baby kicked again, and Preston's expression transformed into wonder. That's something, he whispered, his large hand spanning her rounded belly. Lily's heart raced at his touch, at the genuine awe in his voice. But reality crashed back quickly. She pulled away, rising from her chair. I'm sorry, she said hurriedly. That was inappropriate of me. Preston stood as well, his height making her feel small beside him. Lily, you don't need to apologize, not to me, not ever. It's getting late, she said, avoiding his gaze. You should probably go. He studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. I'll come by tomorrow if that's all right. Lily knew she should refuse, should end whatever this was before it went any further. Preston Drake was a good man, too good to saddle himself with someone like her. Yet she couldn't bring herself to send him away. Tomorrow, she agreed softly. True to his word, Preston returned the following evening and the one after that. 2 weeks passed this way, their friendship deepening with each conversation, each shared sunset. The town noticed, of course. Whispers followed Lily even more persistently now, no longer just about her condition, but about the deputy's inexplicable interest in Rose Creek's fallen woman. Preston seemed unbothered by the talk. If anything, he grew more public in his attentions, escorting Lily to church on Sundays, where they sat alone in the back pew, and walking with her openly through town when she needed supplies. You're ruining your reputation, Lily told him one afternoon as they left the general store, Mrs. Hornsby's disapproving stare burning into their backs. Preston shrugged. Can't ruin what I don't value much to begin with. Your position, then. Marshal Thompson can't be pleased. Thompson's concerned with whether I do my job, not who I spend my time with." He took her basket from her hand. "Besides, what kind of lawman would I be if I let the opinions of busybodies dictate my actions?" Before Lily could respond, a commotion erupted from the saloon across the street. Raised voices gave way to the crash of breaking furniture, and then a gunshot shattered the afternoon quiet. Preston's demeanor changed instantly. "Get inside the store," he ordered, pressing her basket back into her hands. "Stay there until I come for you." He strode toward the saloon, one hand already on his pistol. Lily watched him go, her heart in her throat. Despite his instruction, she couldn't bring herself to retreat to the store where Mrs. Hornsby waited with her judgment. Instead, she stood rooted to the spot, clutching her basket like a shield. The saloon doors burst open, and two men tumbled out onto the boardwalk, locked in a violent struggle. One was a stranger, rough-looking, with a wild beard and clothes caked with trail dust. The other was Preston, his hat gone and a thin line of blood trickling from his temple. The crowd that had gathered scattered as the men grappled. Preston's superior training was evident, but the stranger fought with the desperation of a cornered animal. They crashed into a water trough, sending up a spray that momentarily separated them. The stranger recovered first, lunging for his fallen gun. Preston's boot came down hard on the man's wrist, a sickening crack followed by a howl of pain. "That's enough, Blackwell," Preston growled, drawing his own weapon and aiming it at the prone figure. A murmur went through the onlookers. Lily's blood ran cold. Blackwell, the leader of the gang that had been terrorizing the territory. Preston hauled the man to his feet, securing his hands with manacles. "Samuel Blackwell, you're under arrest for murder, robbery, and about a dozen other crimes I haven't got time to list." He glanced around at the gathered crowd. "Anyone seen Marshal Thompson?" "Rode out to the Dunham place," someone called. "Won't be back till sundown." Preston nodded grimly. "Then Mr. Blackwell here will just have to enjoy our hospitality until the marshal returns." As Preston marched his prisoner toward the jailhouse, his eyes met Lily's across the street. Relief washed over his features, followed quickly by concern. "I told you to get inside," he said when they drew closer. "I was worried," Lily replied simply. Something softened in Preston's expression. "I'm fine, just doing my job." Blackwell, who had been surprisingly quiet until now, suddenly jerked his head up. His gaze traveled from Preston to Lily, lingering on her swollen belly. "Well, ain't this sweet?" he sneered. "The lawman and his whore." Preston's reaction was immediate and violent. He slammed Blackwell against the nearest post, forearm pressed against the outlaw's throat. "You will not speak of her," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "Not one word." Fear flickered in Blackwell's eyes, but he managed a choking laugh. "Touched a nerve, did I?" "What's it matter to you what I call your ruined woman?" Preston pressed harder, his face inches from Blackwell's. "She's not ruined," he said, each word precise and clear. "And if I ever hear you or anyone else say otherwise, they'll answer to me." The street had gone silent, every eye on the tableau before them. Lily stood frozen, Preston's words echoing in her ears. "Get him to the jail, deputy." Marshal Thompson's voice cut through the tension. The older lawman had apparently returned early, dismounting from his horse with a weary sigh. "Before you strangle him and create more paperwork for us both." Preston released Blackwell, who gasped and coughed dramatically. Without another word, he shoved the outlaw toward the jailhouse, not looking back at Lily or the gathered crowd. Later that evening, a knock at Lily's door startled her from her reading. She opened it to find Preston standing there, hat in hand, the cut on his temple now cleaned and bandaged. "I came to apologize," he said without preamble, "for what happened in town today, for putting you in that position." Lily stepped aside to let him in. "You have nothing to apologize for. Blackwell shouldn't have spoken to you that way. No one should." "I've heard worse," she said softly. "Though I appreciate your defense." Preston paced her small sitting room, agitation evident in every line of his body. "You shouldn't have to hear any of it. Not from him, not from Mrs. Hornsby, not from anyone in this town." "Preston," Lily said, moving to stand in front of him, halting his pacing. "What's really bothering you?" He looked down at her, his eyes stormy with emotion. "What he called you. What they all call you. Ruined." He spat the word like it was poison, as if carrying a child somehow diminishes your worth. "It's the way of the world," Lily said, though the words tasted bitter. "A woman's value is tied to her virtue." "It's a foolish way," Preston countered. "And I want no part of it." He took her hands in his, the gesture so unexpected that Lily nearly pulled away, but his grip was gentle, his calloused thumbs brushing over her knuckles. "I've watched you these past weeks," he continued. "Seen how you hold your head high despite their whispers. How you care for yourself and your child alone, asking for nothing from anyone. There's more strength in you than in half the men I've known." Lily's throat tightened with emotion. "Preston, let me finish," he said softly. "I didn't plan this. When I came to Rose Creek, I was just looking for a quiet post, somewhere to do my job and be left alone. I wasn't looking for this for you." His eyes held hers. "But here you are and here I am, and I can't seem to stay away." "You shouldn't say such things," Lily whispered. "You don't know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing." His voice gained confidence. "I'm choosing you, Lily Sullivan, you and your child." She shook her head, pulling her hands from his. "You can't. I won't let you ruin your life for me. Ruin." Preston laughed, the sound rich and warm in the quiet room. "Is that what you think this would be? What else could it be? I'm carrying another man's child, Preston. The town already thinks I don't care what the town thinks," he interrupted. "And as for the child—" His expression softened. "Any man can father a child, Lily. It takes something else entirely to be a father." Tears welled in Lily's eyes. "Why would you want this burden? There are plenty of unmarried women in the territory who don't come with my complications." Preston reached out, gently brushing a tear from her cheek. "If they called you ruined for carrying a child, then I'll take ruin forever." "Gladly." Lily stared at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt or hesitation. She found none, only certainty and something that looked remarkably like love. "You can't mean that," she whispered. "I do," he said simply. "I'm not asking for an answer tonight. Just think about it. Think about a future where you don't have to face their judgment alone. Where your child has a father who chose them, wanted them." He stepped back, retrieving his hat from where he'd set it. "I should go. It's late and you need your rest." Lily watched him move toward the door, her mind whirling with his words, with the possibilities he'd laid before her. Just as he reached for the doorknob, she found her voice. "Preston," he turned, hope written plainly across his features. "Tomorrow," she said. "Come back tomorrow and we'll talk more." His smile was like the sunrise, slow, warm, and full of promise. "Tomorrow, then." As the door closed behind him, Lily placed both hands on her belly, feeling the gentle movements of the life within her. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine a future that wasn't defined by shame and solitude. A future with Preston Drake. Morning brought rain, the steady drumming on Lily's roof, a soothing rhythm as she went about her chores. The storm matched her mood, not dark, exactly, but thoughtful, contemplative. Preston's words from the previous night replayed in her mind as she kneaded bread dough, the familiar motions requiring little thought. "If they called you ruined for carrying a child, then I'll take ruin forever." The declaration was so at odds with everything she'd come to expect from men, from the world. Thomas had promised her the moon and stars, then vanished like morning mist when responsibility loomed. Her own father, though he loved her, had been unable to face the scandal of her situation, fleeing to Boston under the guise of his health. But Preston looked at her situation square in the face and offered not judgment or abandonment but acceptance, partnership, perhaps even love. Could she trust it? Trust him? The knock at her door came earlier than expected, barely past noon. Lily wiped her hands on her apron and smoothed her hair before opening the door, expecting Preston. Instead, she found Marshal Thompson, rain dripping from his hat brim, his expression grave. "Miss Sullivan," he said, removing his hat. "May I come in? I'm afraid I have news." Dread pooled in Lily's stomach as she stepped aside. "Of course, Marshal. Is something wrong?" Thompson entered, declining her offer of coffee with a shake of his head. "It's about Deputy Drake." The dread crystallized into fear. "What's happened? Is he hurt?" No, Thompson assured her quickly. "But there's been a development. The rest of the Blackwell gang has been spotted just outside town. They're demanding we release Samuel or they'll burn Rose Creek to the ground." Lily sank into a chair, one hand automatically going to her belly. "What will you do?" "We've sent for help from the fort, but it'll be 2 days at least before they can get men here." Thompson hesitated. "In the meantime, Drake is organizing the townsmen, setting up defenses. He's going to fight them. How many are there?" "At least 15, from what our scouts could tell." Thompson sighed heavily. "Miss Sullivan, I came here because Drake asked me to. He wants you to know he won't be able to call on you today as planned. And he suggests strongly that you consider leaving town until this is resolved." Lily straightened. "Leave? Where would I go? The Morrison place is outside the likely line of fire. Drake thought you might find refuge there. Eliza Morrison is expecting her own child soon. He thought you might find comfort in her company." The suggestion was reasonable, practical even. The Morrison ranch lay nestled in a small valley several miles from town, protected by the surrounding hills. If the Blackwell gang made good on their threat, the ranch would likely be spared. Yet the thought of fleeing while Preston stayed to face danger made Lily's chest tighten. "When will they come?" "The gang. They've given us until sundown tomorrow to release Samuel. If we don't—" Thompson trailed off, the implications clear. "Thank you for coming, Marshal," Lily said, rising from her chair. "Please tell Deputy Drake I received his message." Thompson nodded, replacing his hat. "He's a good man, Drake. Best deputy I've had." He paused at the door. "Whatever is between you two, and it's not my business to ask, just know that he thinks very highly of you, Miss Sullivan. Higher than perhaps you realize." After the marshal left, Lily stood at her window, watching the rain sheet down, obscuring the view of town. Somewhere out there, Preston was preparing to defend Rose Creek, the same town that had shunned and scorned her for months. The same people who whispered ruined behind her back would depend on him to save them. The irony wasn't lost on her. As dusk approached, the rain slackened to a gentle drizzle. Lily had packed a small bag, ready to depart for the Morrison ranch at first light as Preston had suggested. Yet something kept her from settling, a restlessness that drove her to pace her small home like a caged animal. The knock, when it came, was soft but insistent. Lily hurried to the door, her heart leaping at the thought of Preston. It was indeed him, standing on her porch in the gathering darkness, raindrops clinging to his coat. His face was drawn with fatigue, but his eyes lit up at the sight of her. "You should be resting," Lily admonished, pulling him inside. "Marshal Thompson told me what's happening." "I know," Preston said, removing his wet hat. "I couldn't stay away, though, not without seeing you first." Lily busied herself getting him a towel, trying to calm her racing heart. "The marshal said you wanted me to go to the Morrison place. It would be safer," Preston confirmed, drying his face and hair. "This isn't going to be pretty, Lily. The Blackwell gang isn't known for mercy. And what about you? Will you be safe?" A ghost of a smile crossed his features. "Worried about me, are you? Don't tease," she said, her voice sharper than intended. "Of course I'm worried. You're facing 15 outlaws with what? A handful of townsmen who probably haven't fired a gun in anger their whole lives." Preston set down the towel, moving closer to her. "I've been in worse situations, and we're not without resources. Thompson is an old hand at this sort of thing, and there are a few veterans in town who remember how to fight." "That's supposed to reassure me." "No," he admitted, "but it's the truth, and I've never lied to you, Lily." "I don't intend to start now." She looked up at him, this man who had walked into her life so unexpectedly and changed everything. "I was going to say yes." Preston's brow furrowed in confusion. "Yes. Tonight, when you came as we planned, I was going to say yes to whatever this is between us. To trying, at least." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by a joy so pure it transformed his tired features. "You were," Lily nodded. "But now you're preparing for a battle you might not survive, and her voice broke. "I can't bear the thought of finding something so precious only to lose it immediately." Preston took her hands in his. "Listen to me, Lily Sullivan. I have every intention of surviving this, and when it's over, I'm coming straight back here to collect on that yes. Promise me," she whispered. Instead of answering with words, Preston leaned down, capturing her lips with his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but quickly deepened into something more desperate, more urgent. Lily's arms wound around his neck, drawing him closer despite her rounded belly between them. When they finally parted, both breathless, Preston rested his forehead against hers. "I promise," he murmured. "Wait for me at the Morrison place. Keep yourself and the baby safe, that's all I ask." "I'll go at first light," Lily agreed reluctantly. Preston kissed her once more briefly, then stepped back. "I should get back to town. There's still much to do before tomorrow." At the door, he turned back to her. "Lily, when this is over, I want to do this properly, court you the way you deserve." Despite everything, she smiled. "I think we're well past traditional courting, don't you?" His answering smile was warm enough to chase away the evening chill. "Maybe so, but you deserve the effort all the same." After he left, Lily stood at the window long into the night, watching the distant lights of town where Preston and the others prepared for the coming confrontation. Sleep, when it finally came, was fitful and filled with dreams of gunfire and flames. Dawn broke gray and cheerless, the previous day's rain giving way to a heavy mist that clung to the valley. Lily rose early, completing her morning routine with mechanical precision. Her bag sat by the door, ready for her journey to the Morrison ranch as she'd promised Preston. Yet as she prepared to leave, doubt gnawed at her. The Morrison place was indeed safer, but it was also miles away, too far to know what was happening in town, too far to help if things went badly. The knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. For a wild moment she thought Preston had returned, but when she opened the door, she found Eliza Morrison herself standing there, wrapped in a thick shawl. "Eliza, what are you doing here? I was just about to leave for your ranch." The heavily pregnant woman smiled tiredly. "Change of plans, it seems. Jacob thought it best I come to town where the doctor is. My time's coming sooner than we expected." Lily ushered her inside, alarmed at the pallor of her friend's face. "Where is Jacob now?" "Gone to help with the defenses," Eliza replied, sinking gratefully into a chair. "All the men are. Even old Mr. Gunderson with his bad hip is up on a roof with a shotgun." "You shouldn't have traveled in your condition," Lily scolded gently, helping Eliza remove her damp shawl. "When did the pains start?" "Just before dawn. Jacob wanted to fetch the doctor to the ranch, but I insisted on coming here." Eliza grimaced slightly. "I may have underestimated how uncomfortable the journey would be." Lily quickly assessed her friend's condition. Eliza was further along than she was, nearly at term and clearly in the early stages of labor. The journey from the ranch, bumpy and stressful, had likely hastened things. "I'll fetch Dr. Wilson," Lily decided, already reaching for her shawl. "You rest here, don't try to move." "No," Eliza caught her wrist. "The doctor's with the men. They've set up an infirmary in the church, preparing for casualties." Her voice broke on the last word, fear for her husband evident in her eyes. Lily's heart sank. If the doctor was occupied and with the confrontation with the Blackwell gang looming, "Then I'll help you myself," she declared with more confidence than she felt. "My mother was a midwife before she married. I've helped with births before." Relief washed over Eliza's face. "Thank you, Lily. I knew I could count on you." The irony wasn't lost on Lily. 6 months ago, Eliza Morrison had been one of many who had turned their backs on her when news of her condition spread. Now, in her hour of need, she turned to the very woman she'd helped ostracize. "Let's get you comfortable," Lily said, pushing aside old hurts. "This may be a long day for both of us." As the morning wore on, Eliza's labor progressed steadily. Lily kept her as comfortable as possible, drawing on half-remembered lessons from her mother and her own reading on the subject. Outside, the town grew unnaturally quiet as citizens either fled or hunkered down to await the coming confrontation. Around midday, while Eliza dozed between contractions, a commotion outside drew Lily to the window. A group of riders was approaching from the east, too many to be a patrol from town. Her blood ran cold as she realized what she was seeing. The Blackwell gang had arrived early. Gunfire erupted almost immediately, the sharp crack of rifles echoing through the valley. Lily watched in horror as the riders split into smaller groups, circling around to approach the town from multiple directions. "What's happening?" Eliza asked, roused by the noise. Lily stepped away from the window. "Nothing to worry about," she lied smoothly. "Just some commotion in town." But Eliza wasn't fooled. Another contraction seized her and she gripped Lily's hand with surprising strength. "They're here, aren't they? The outlaws," Lily nodded grimly. "Yes, but the men are ready, and we're far enough from the center of town to be safe for now." She hoped she sounded more confident than she felt. The hours that followed were a blur of mounting tension. Eliza's labor intensified as the sounds of battle grew closer. Lily divided her attention between her friend's needs and the window, watching as smoke began to rise from several buildings in town. By late afternoon, Eliza was fully in the throes of hard labor, crying out with each contraction. Lily had transformed her bedroom into a makeshift birthing room, gathering clean linens and heating water on the stove. "You're doing wonderfully," she encouraged, wiping Eliza's brow with a damp cloth. "Not much longer now." A particularly loud explosion rocked the house, rattling the windows and sending a shower of dust from the ceiling. Eliza screamed, more in fear than pain. "Jacob," she sobbed. "Oh God, Jacob." "SHH," Lily soothed. "Jacob is fine. He's a strong man and clever. He'll come back to you." Whether Eliza believed her or not, she had no choice but to continue her labor. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the windows, she gave a final, tremendous push, and her child entered the world with a lusty cry. "A girl," Lily announced, tears streaming down her face as she quickly cleaned the squalling infant. "A beautiful, perfect girl." Eliza collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted but radiant. "Let me see her." Lily wrapped the baby in a clean blanket and placed her in her mother's arms. The moment of peace amid so much chaos was almost surreal new life asserting itself despite the violence outside. The moment was shattered by the sound of splintering wood from the front of the house. Lily's head snapped up, her body tensing. Someone was breaking in. "Stay here," she whispered to Eliza, who clutched her newborn closer. "Don't make a sound." Moving as quietly as possible, Lily retrieved the small revolver she kept in her dresser drawer, a parting gift from her father when he left. She'd never fired it, but the weight of it gave her a measure of courage as she crept toward the bedroom door. The floorboards in the front room creaked under heavy footsteps. Lily raised the gun, her hands trembling but determined. If whoever had broken in meant harm to Eliza or the baby, they'd have to go through her first. The bedroom door pushed open slowly. Lily steadied the revolver, finger tightening on the trigger. "Lily," Preston's voice sent a wave of relief so intense through her that her knees nearly buckled. He stood in the doorway, his face streaked with soot and blood, his clothes torn and dirty. "Preston," she lowered the gun immediately. "You're alive." "Barely," he admitted, his eyes taking in the scene behind her, Eliza in the bed with her newborn. Understanding dawned. "You've been busy, I see." Before Lily could respond, more footsteps approached and Jacob Morrison appeared behind Preston, his face transforming from worry to awe as he spotted his wife and child. "Eliza, is that?" "Your daughter," Eliza confirmed, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Come meet her." As Jacob rushed to his family's side, Preston drew Lily into the front room, closing the bedroom door to give the new family privacy. "Are you hurt?" Lily asked, her eyes frantically searching him for injuries. "Nothing serious. A few cuts, some burns." He winced as she touched a gash on his arm. "The town, though. How bad?" "Bad enough. The saloon's gone and Hornsby's store, the church too, though we got everyone out first." Preston ran a hand through his hair, leaving a streak of ash. "But we held. Thompson managed to kill Kurt Blackwell, Samuel's brother, and their best shot. After that, the fight went out of most of them. And the others, the townspeople," Preston's expression darkened. "3 dead, 7 wounded, but the doctor thinks they'll pull through." Lily's heart clenched. "I'm so sorry, Preston. It could have been worse, much worse." He looked around her small home, which somehow had escaped damage. "I came as soon as I could. When I didn't find you at the Morrison place, I feared. Eliza came to town early this morning. She was already in labor." Lily gestured toward the bedroom. "I couldn't leave her, and we couldn't move her once things started in earnest." Preston shook his head in wonder. "You delivered that baby, in the middle of all this." "I did what needed doing," Lily said simply. "Same as you." Something shifted in Preston's expression, a mixture of awe and deep affection. "I meant what I said last night, you know, about collecting on that, yes." Despite everything, the exhaustion, the fear, the lingering smell of smoke, Lily felt a smile tugging at her lips. "I meant what I said too." Preston closed the distance between them, drawing her into his arms with careful tenderness. "I love you, Lily Sullivan. I think I have since that first day in the store when you stood your ground against Mrs. Hornsby's spite." Lily's heart soared at his words. "I love you too, Preston Drake. Though I fought against it with everything I had." His laugh was soft against her hair. "Stubborn woman. You wouldn't want me any other way." "No," he agreed, drawing back to look into her eyes. "I wouldn't." Outside, the sounds of battle had faded, replaced by the activity of a town beginning to assess and repair damage. Inside Lily's small house, in a moment carved out of chaos, something new and precious took root, a future neither of them had dared imagine just weeks before. In the days that followed, Rose Creek began the slow process of rebuilding. The Blackwell gang was no more. Those who hadn't been killed in the fight were now in custody, awaiting transport to the territorial prison. Marshal Thompson had praised Preston's leadership during the crisis, recommending him for a commendation. More surprising to Lily was the change in how the town treated her. The women who had once crossed the street to avoid her now stopped to inquire after her health. The men tipped their hats respectfully. Even Mrs. Hornsby, whose store had been reduced to charred timber, had approached Lily in the street to thank her for caring for Eliza Morrison during the attack. "It was a Christian act," the woman had said stiffly. "One I won't forget." Lily suspected the change had less to do with her actions and more to do with Preston's very public defense of her, both before and after the battle. He made no secret of his intentions, calling on her daily, escorting her to church, and openly referring to her as his future wife. "You've rehabilitated my reputation," Lily teased him one evening as they sat on her porch watching the sunset. Preston snorted. "If anything, you've elevated mine. Half the town thinks I'm a hero now thanks to you." "Me? What did I do?" "Jacob Morrison has been telling anyone who'll listen how you delivered his daughter while bullets were flying overhead. Called you the bravest woman in Montana territory." Preston's eyes crinkled with amusement. "I can't say I disagree with his assessment." Lily blushed, still unused to praise after so many months of scorn. "I only did what was necessary, which is exactly what makes it brave." Preston took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Have you thought about names for your little one?" Lily's free hand went to her belly, which seemed to grow rounder by the day. "I've considered a few. For a boy, perhaps William, after my grandfather. For a girl, I'm less decided." "What about Hope?" Preston suggested quietly. "It seems fitting." Tears pricked at Lily's eyes. "Hope." "Yes, I think that would be perfect." "May I?" Preston asked, gesturing toward her belly. When she nodded, he placed his large hand over the swell, his touch gentle. The baby kicked as if in response, making them both laugh. "Strong," Preston observed. "Like their mother, and stubborn, no doubt." "Like both of us." Preston's expression grew serious. "Lily, I know we've talked about marriage, about me raising this child as my own, but I want to be clear about something." Lily tensed slightly. "Yes. I don't want to wait until after the baby comes. I want us to be a family from the very start." Relief washed through her. "Are you proposing, Deputy Drake?" "I'm trying to," he said with a rueful smile, "though not very eloquently, it seems." He slid from the chair onto one knee before her, still holding her hand. "Lily Sullivan, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "As soon as possible." Lily looked down at him, this man who had seen past her shame to the woman beneath, who had claimed her and her unborn child as his own without hesitation. "Yes," she said, her voice firm and clear. "Yes, I will." 2 weeks later, on a crisp autumn morning, Lily stood beside Preston in Rose Creek's newly rebuilt church. Her simple cream-colored dress had been hastily altered to accommodate her 7-month belly, and her bouquet was made of wildflowers gathered that morning from the hills outside town. To her surprise, the church was full. The same townspeople who had shunned her for months now sat in the pews, smiling as Pastor Williams led them through their vows. In the front row, Eliza Morrison cradled her infant daughter, while Jacob looked on proudly. Marshall Thompson stood as Preston's best man, his weathered face softened by a rare smile. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Pastor Williams declared. "You may kiss your bride, Deputy." Preston needed no further encouragement. He gathered Lily into his arms as gently as if she were made of glass, his lips finding hers in a kiss that promised a lifetime of tomorrows. The church erupted in applause and cheers, the sound washing over Lily like a benediction. "Mrs. Drake," Preston murmured against her lips. "How does it sound?" "Perfect," Lily whispered back. "Absolutely perfect." That evening, as they sat before the fire in what was now their home, Preston presented Lily with a small wooden cradle he had crafted in secret. "It's beautiful," she gasped, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "When did you find time to make this?" "I have my ways," he said mysteriously, wrapping his arms around her from behind. His hands came to rest on her belly, where their child, for that was how they both thought of it now, moved restlessly. "Besides, I wanted our little one to have something special, something made just for them." Lily leaned back against him, savoring the solid warmth of his chest. "They already have something special. They have you." Preston kissed her temple. "And you. The strongest, most beautiful mother any child could wish for." As night fell over Rose Creek, Lily thought about the journey that had brought her here, the shame and isolation, the whispers and judgment, and now, miraculously, this happiness she'd never dared hope for. 6 months ago, they had called her ruined for carrying a child. Today, she was Preston Drake's wife, about to begin a new life built on love and acceptance rather than scorn. "What are you thinking?" Preston asked, noticing her contemplative mood. Lily smiled, turning in his arms to face him. "I was thinking that sometimes, what looks like ruin is really just the beginning of something better." Preston's eyes darkened with emotion. "I told you I'd take ruin forever, but this," he gestured around them at their home, at the life they were building. "This isn't ruin, Lily. This is redemption." As winter settled over Montana territory, Lily and Preston Drake welcomed their daughter into the world. Hope Elizabeth Drake arrived during a gentle snowfall, her lusty cries filling their small house with the promise of new beginnings. Preston, who had paced anxiously outside the bedroom door while Dr. Wilson attended Lily, was the first to hold her after her mother. His large hands cradled her tiny form with a tenderness that brought fresh tears to Lily's eyes. "She's perfect," he whispered, awe evident in every syllable. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and the prettiest face I've ever seen. Besides her mother's," Dr. Wilson added with a wink as he gathered his things. "Congratulations to you both. She's a fine, healthy girl." After the doctor left, Preston carefully returned Hope to Lily's arms, then settled beside them on the bed, his arm protectively around his wife's shoulders. "How do you feel?" he asked, studying Lily's tired but radiant face. "Exhausted. Sore." She looked down at their daughter, who had fallen asleep against her breast. "Happier than I ever thought possible." Preston pressed a kiss to her temple. "You were so brave. I could hear you from outside, and it nearly killed me not to be with you, Doctor." "Wilson is old-fashioned," Lily said with a soft laugh. "But he's an excellent doctor, and you're here now. That's what matters." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their daughter sleep. Outside, Rose Creek was transformed by snow, the rebuilding efforts temporarily halted by winter's arrival. But inside, in the warmth of their home, the Drake family was complete. "I never thought I'd have this," Lily admitted quietly. "After Thomas left, after I realized I was with child, I thought my life was over, that I'd always be alone, always be ruined." Preston's arm tightened around her. "And now," Lily looked up at him, this man who had changed everything with his unwavering love and acceptance. "Now I know better. What they called ruin was really just the path that led me to you, to us." As if sensing she was the topic of conversation, little Hope stirred and opened her eyes that, to Preston's delight, were already showing signs of being the same clear blue as her mother's. "Look at that," he said softly. "She knows we're talking about her." "She's going to be advanced," Lily teased, "and strong-willed, no doubt. With us as parents, I'd expect nothing less." Preston carefully stroked Hope's downy head. "I want you to know something, Lily. I meant what I said before we married. I don't see her as anyone's child but ours. From this day forward, she is my daughter in every way that matters." Fresh tears welled in Lily's eyes. "I know. And she'll know too as she grows. What a gift you've given her, given us both." As winter gave way to spring and spring to summer, the Drake family thrived in Rose Creek. Preston continued his duties as deputy, earning respect throughout the territory for his fairness and courage. Lily, with hope strapped to her chest, gradually returned to community life, even helping to organize the town's first lending library. To their surprise, Rose Creek embraced them fully. The whispers faded, replaced by genuine acceptance. Even Mrs. Hornsby, whose new store had reopened in the spring, became one of Hope's most devoted admirers, saving special candies for the prettiest baby in Montana whenever Lily brought her to town. "It's remarkable how things change," Lily observed one summer evening as she and Preston sat on their porch, watching Hope crawl determinedly across a quilt spread on the grass. "A year ago, I was a pariah. Now I'm on the church social committee." Preston laughed, the sound rich and warm in the twilight. "People can surprise you. Sometimes they just need a reason to see beyond their prejudices. Or a rather intimidating deputy to show them the error of their ways," Lily teased, nudging him with her shoulder. "I may have encouraged a shift in perspective," Preston admitted with a grin. "But you did the real work, Lily. You showed this town what strength looks like, what forgiveness looks like." His expression softened as he watched Hope pull herself up on a chair, her small face alight with triumph. "What love looks like." Lily followed his gaze, her heart full to bursting with pride and joy. "She's growing so fast. Soon she'll be walking, then running, then who knows what else. Whatever she does, wherever she goes, she'll always know she was wanted," Preston said firmly. "Always loved. Never a burden or a shame, but our greatest blessing." As the sun dipped below the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Hope let go of the chair and took one wobbly step toward her parents, then another. Her delighted laugh bubbled up as she managed 3 steps before tumbling onto the soft grass. Preston was on his feet in an instant, scooping her up and spinning her around, his deep laughter joining her childish giggles. "Did you see that, Lily? She walked." "I saw," Lily confirmed, rising to join them. "Our brave girl taking her first steps." Preston drew Lily into their embrace, the 3 of them a perfect circle in the fading light. Hope patted her father's cheek with a pudgy hand, babbling happily in her own language. "Papa loves you," Preston told her, his voice thick with emotion, "more than you'll ever know." Over Hope's dark curls, his eyes met Lily's, filled with a love so pure and true it took her breath away. "And Mama," he added softly, "Papa loves Mama very much." "Mama loves Papa too," Lily whispered. "Always." As night fell over Rose Creek, stars appearing one by one in the vast Montana sky, the Drake family returned to the warmth of their home. Not a perfect home, perhaps, but one built on a foundation stronger than any prejudice or hardship could shake, a foundation of choice, of acceptance, of love freely given and gratefully received. What the town had once called ruin had become their greatest joy. What they had labeled shame had transformed into boundless pride. And in the eyes of a child who would grow up knowing only love, never judgment, lay the promise of a future brighter than either Lily or Preston could have imagined in their darkest days. They had taken ruin forever, and in doing so had found something infinitely more precious: redemption, purpose, and a love that would echo through generations to come.